Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark once more. It is Friday, October 9th, 2015 at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in, and actually thank you for caring about our planet. Today is Call-In Friday, where I allow the listeners to call in and we can discuss anything that's on your mind or any of the events that we've talked about in the last week or however long you want to talk about it. I would like to share with you some of my thoughts before I give out the radio, because I think we've had a pretty monumental week that has gone unnoticed. In Japan, the scientists are arguing whether Fukushima has actually caused an increase in thyroid cancer, a 50-fold increase in thyroid cancer among the children of Fukushima. And these rat bastards are actually, the nerve of them to actually even have a debate that radiation causes harm to people is unconscionable. It is a crime against humanity, and frankly, it has me angrier than ever. I mean, it is an unconscionable act. I know I've talked about this to you guys in the last couple of weeks. We have 6 million Americans now living with uranium-tainted water. And I'm not talking about 2 times the level of maximum contaminated uranium. And I'm not talking about 5 times. I'm talking about, it has been proven by the University of Illinois that we now have 89 times the level of uranium in the water, in the aquifer, for over 6 million Americans living in this country. Almost the entire state of Nebraska and flowing down to the Gulf state is contaminated with uranium-contaminated water. And have we heard anybody organizing or attempting to contact their senators? I've called those offices and they were like, well, thank you very much for letting us know, ma'am. I mean, I know I don't live in those states, but if somebody called my office and said, hey, I just read a report that you guys are living with 89 times the contamination of uranium, I'd be like, oh my God, really? I mean, I'm like that now and I'm not even living there. Last night we had a fire on the dam very, very close to Hanford. The dam, I forget the name of it, but it's a dam up here on the Oregon border, right on the Oregon and Washington border, that had a fire. There was an explosion. Several people were killed. And they're saying, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Very close to Hanford. But we need to get a grip, folks. When the shit hits the fan, they are not going to tell us The revolution is not going to be televised. We are not going to be told, which is why it is really ever more imperative that people listening to this alternative radio station, and we call it alternative because it's really all we have. It's all we have to hear the real truth. This station has not been bought out. There are very few on the internet who have not been bought out or coerced or colluded. And this is one of the few places where we're going to hear the truth about chemtrails, about food poisoning, about our government. And I think this is where my anger really generates. It's hitting me like a ton of bricks. On my YouTube channel, Nuts for Art, that's NUTZFORART, I'm making pretty good headway. I'm reading John Goffman's book, Poisoned Power. And it is stunning to realize that book was written in 1971. That information is old news. They have known it for a very, very long time. Scientific evidence that proves high exposure to radiation, especially young children and among babies, is much more detrimental than it is to adults. The older you get, the less rapidly you see the results from radiation. And I think it's because your cells are not breaking up as quickly as when you're growing, and your cells are constantly dividing. You're having to grow. The radiation actually affects the cells. And in this book, in this chapter that we're reading, it's actually explaining how it damages your cells. What happens is the radiation basically causes a crack in our chromosomes. And so when the chromosomes split, the part that is broken off from our chromosome permanently damages the new chromosome that it creates. It creates a new cell. When it splits, it creates a new cell. And so basically, we're not just having mutated genes, we're having really they're lost. They are, what was that word? I mean, it was a simple word. It means that they're deleted. We have deleted genes. So we don't know if when a person is exposed to radiation, when they reproduce, what types of deleted genes are deleted. It takes a long time for the negative effects of radiation to appear. And the reason why it shows up 3 to 4, 5 generations, 6 generations later is that when a chromosome is damaged, those cells, that entire genetic process goes along, and the injured cells reproduce as injured cells. So it just continues generation after generation, and it may show up this generation, may show up 4 generations. There was a kind of a very shocking picture that I saw. You can probably find it yourself. You just type in on the Google's images, radiation negative effects. There was a man who had 6 fingers, 5 fingers and 1 thumb. He had 6 digits in one thumb. And that is, when you ask somebody a nuclear scientist, they're like, well, it's not that bad. It's just an extra finger. Really? I don't know how many of you have ever read the book, The Canticles of Leibowitz. It's a science fiction book, kind of an older book. But throughout the book, you see a bunch of genetic mutations, and you begin to realize after you're about, a chapter in, that they're talking about planet Earth, centuries ahead of time. I read the book probably 30 years ago. But it is really a shock. It's a shock to my system. The more I read about this stuff, since last Friday, actually, I have to say, I've had quite an education. I had a 4-hour conversation with Donna Gilmore, who runs an excellent website. I called her up. She was instrumental in shutting down the San Onofre nuclear site. And now she's instrumental in helping to make it safe. Because now that San Onofre is shut down, as it turns out, we have storage containers that can't be moved. They need to put these things into storage containers to spend fuel waste. They say it's too hot to move for 40 years. So what Donna has discovered, that in the United States, not Europe, in the United States, the licensees who run our nuclear power plants are beyond cheapskates. They are murderers. They are straight up murderers with their, quote, so-called economic decisions. Do you know that the spent fuel waste in the United States, we store our spent fuel in casks that are only 1/2 an inch thick steel? At San Onofre, they're .625. I guess that's 3/8, right? That's it, folks. Do you know what they store them in Europe? They actually store them in casks that are 18 inches thick. Once they're filled up, they build a little dome around it, like a little house, to extra protect them because they know that they will start leaking in 250 years. 250 to 300 years. So they build something around it in the hopes that future scientists will be able to figure out what the fuck to do with this contamination that will kill all life on our planet. It will kill all life on our planet. And we are accumulating it at 1,000 times the Hiroshima bombs per year per nuclear plant. That's how the ratio is. Thousands and thousands of gallons. In the United States, and this is the stunning part, San Onofre sits right next to the Pacific Ocean. Not only did the NRC, since the WPP blew up the WIP plant, the waste processing plant down in New Mexico, which is still an ongoing disaster that they are still insisting on lying to the residents and everyone else that don't worry, it's under control, nobody's been harmed. It is an unmitigated disaster in itself. But since that happened, the NRC has basically told every single licensee in the United States, you can now keep the spent fuel, your nuclear waste on site because there's no place to put it. They have done nothing. That fire happened a year ago in February. They have done zero to actually find something to do. It should be a national emergency, folks. This is not something to take lightly. Just like the 6 million people being tainted with uranium is a national emergency. I keep jumping up and down about it because I'm just like nonplussed that people are like, ho hum, gee, they're killing us. What else is new? You know how those guys are. They just like, they're going to kill everybody on the planet. Thank God Jesus is coming. Oh my goodness gracious. That is seriously... It's beyond comprehension, the suicidal effects of social engineering. It is just beyond comprehension. I'm nonplussed by it. So I see that I've rambled on. We've got 2 minutes till 8:15, and that night at 8:15 I'll give out the phone number. I do want to remind people, please do go on to the nrc.gov website. Please do make your comments and tell the NRC no to hormesis. It's what I call the Art Robinson theory. That, don't worry, a little bit of radiation is good for you because it'll help us be stronger in the event that we have a massive exposure to radiation. That flies in the face of known science that says radiation exposure is cumulative, which means a little tiny bit probably won't affect your life. You add on another layer of clay, in your mind's eye, you can kind of think of it like you get run over, there's a flood, and then there's a clay silt that sort of runs all over your organs and on your skin. It's like a layer of clay silt. But if you keep doing that, if you keep getting exposed and you're never able to wash off the previous silt, it's like we're building sandstone of nuclear contamination on our organs and on our skin and in our world. So we're basically burying ourselves in nuclear pollution. And the governments that are running this world are sitting there crossing their fingers, hoping that the nuclear apologists and the nuclear liars are telling the truth. And guess what, folks? They're not telling the truth. That's why John Goffman wrote his books. I hope in the next few weeks that I'll be able to get a man who's been studying John Goffman for the last, 30 years. I think his organization has been going for 30 years. And I am in talks with him, and hopefully he'll be able to get an interview with us, and we can talk about in detail exactly the kinds of things that I don't know how to emote because I'm just not a scientist. And frankly, I'm kind of new to all of this stuff. Like, I'm still in the shocked zone uh, of, realizing that our government is using us basically for lab rats. I mean, it is beyond comprehension that that this is what they're doing to us. But guess what? They are doing it to us. The gentleman's name that I'm hoping we can get on, his name is Dave Ratcliffe. And he has been writing essays about John Goffman. He just passed, maybe you have gone to his website. Let me see if I can find it before I give you the wrong name. Ratical, RATICAL.org. And it just passed its 30-year anniversary. So I see that we're at 8:16. Please do call the NRC, folks. Poke around on that comment section. There are three other things open for public comment that I find quite interesting. If anybody wants to call in today and talk to me, and if you don't, you know what? Guess what? I can talk for the next hour easily. As you can see, I just spent 15 minutes blabbing on, no problem. The phone number to give us a call here at ucy.tv right now is 718-717-8296. And for those of you listening that keep a hold of this number, you can use this number to call into whatever radio show is live on ucy.tv radio throughout the day. If it's live, if the host is accepting phone calls, that phone number should work and you should be able to call them. The phone number to call into my radio show right now is 718-717-8296. Please do give me a call. I'd love to chat with you. Let me give you the number again, 718-717-8296. And I have to say that I am blown away. The more I learn about this nuclear disaster, the more I really discover what it really means, what they're really doing. I'm going on my second book that I've read by John Goffman on my YouTube channel. I read an article by Alvin Weinberg on my YouTube channel, and it was called, what was the title of it? The Use of Nuclear Power, the Good of Nuclear Power. And he was a nuclear apologist who basically used the term. He basically said in that essay that we have now signed a Faustian contract with the nuclear industry. Humanity has crossed the line where we now depend on them. They are now he said this in this essay that he wrote, that we now have created a class of elites called the nuclear priesthood. And these are the people that will guard and safeguard humanity from now until time eternity. Now that was written in 1970. And frankly, if those guys have turned into the nuclear priesthood, they have pretty much fucking failed in my view. They have done nothing right, especially in the United States. Although Europe isn't any better. What did the Europeans do? They built pipes since they can no longer push their nuclear waste in casket out into the middle of the ocean. They basically built some plumbing and put big long pipes out from their nuclear power plants, and they're slowly releasing it into the Irish Sea. Along with Sellafield. Sellafield is a nuclear power processing plant that is leaking 8 billion liters a day? So, I saw the Scandinavian scientist maybe about a year ago. He was being interviewed about it, maybe a year and a half, and he said, look, this is the thing about eating fish. It's really like Russian roulette. Not all the fish are going to be contaminated. Not all the fish absorb the radiation at the same rate. So it is a matter of a crapshoot. If you eat fish at your own risk. I personally have stopped eating fish because, I feel like, in fact, it's the same way if I eat yogurt or something, anything with dairy or cheese, I can't even eat it anymore. If it comes onto my plate, if I'm out, somebody serves me some cheese, I tend to not eat it because I keep wondering, is this going to be the plate of food that's going to give me cancer? Or is this going to be the plate of food that, causes some type of blood disease? Or, I don't know, for God's sakes, the stuff that happens, the diabetes that is in onset. Radiation causes diabetes. And I honestly think it causes autism. It causes sterility. That's, in fact, one of the things that John Goffman was talking about in the passages I read yesterday, was the high levels of sterility, because children and infants and babies in utero are specifically much more susceptible to the negative effects of radiation than are adults or even young teens. And the very reason is, for some reason, the radiation really affects the ova and the testes. And it breaks up those chromosomes inside there so that the baby's born, maybe looks perfectly normal, lives its life, and then loses its human fitness. And by fitness, I mean the scientific meaning of the word fitness, the ability to thrive and reproduce. And in fact, we are losing our species fitness. We are losing our ability to reproduce, and we are losing our ability to have fitness, to be able to thrive. I do not call what we've got going on our planet thriving. We are literally surviving. We are battered children, battered women, battered men. We are being battered big time by the war profiteers. I don't know how any of you feel about this, but Saudi Arabia being on the Human Rights Commission at the UN, while just this week we hear about them beheading, they arrested a 17-year-old boy. This is just one case. This is one case. We're not talking about the two princesses that were starved to death in their palaces, sequestered and starved to death in their palaces, who made a plea on YouTube, who seemingly disappeared. So what does that tell us? They probably did starve to death. For what? For speaking out about women having the right to leave their home without a male escort or being able to drive a car. That's why they were starved to death. This week we see in the news of two young teenage boys from Saudi Arabia who were arrested for protesting, and they were tortured. This picture of the dad of this one child said that his son aged 20 years in the last 3 years. He has been beaten and tortured so much he looks like an old man. And they are going to behead him. And when he saw him for the religious holiday recently, he said, "Look, Dad, I'm not the only person to ever die of injustice." The kids accepted his fate. Frankly, he's probably looking forward to it. The last fucking thing he wants to do is spend his life getting tortured and beaten by these sadistic bastards who run Saudi Arabia. And those are our tax dollars. We give Saudi Arabia, do you know how much money we give to Saudi Arabia? Let me actually look that up so I can speak with some clarity here, because how much subsidies does the United States give to Saudi Arabia? Wow, I am just blown away that we're now the monsters. When I was a young child, I remember thinking, if I lived in the Soviet Union, I would never tolerate the Iron Curtain. And guess what? We live behind the electronic curtain. We seriously live behind the electronic curtain, where we are all being looked at. We're all being intimidated on a daily basis. Why do you think people are not talking? Why do you think people don't want to talk about radiation? Not only will we be being poisoned, but if you talk about it, you're considered an extremist. If you talk about it, you're considered, they'll be calling you a radical. Well, fuck you, man. Call me a radical. I'm just so over the top with people. It's not just PC, folks. It's not just being politically correct. It's about being scared shitless. It's about people not wanting the long arm of the law to knock at your door and start harassing you and finding ways to intimidate you. I don't know about you, but I've had enough of that. Which is why, again, I'm on the radio 3 times a week now. I welcome the opportunity to share information, to express my views, and frankly, to hear views from our callers. So I'm going to give you our number again. The number is 718-717-8296. I don't know how many of the 50 people that are listening have the ability to phone call in, but please do. I'd love to have a conversation with you about any of this. Let me see if I can find this. How much subsidies does the United States give to Saudi Arabia every year? Let me ask that question. Every year. Or let's just say in 2015. Let's say 2014, because maybe they don't have the statistics up for 15. Wow. So ironically, the Google's does not actually give us that. That's interesting. This is how it works, folks. You kind of have to dig, don't you? 3.122. Oh my gosh. Let me see if $3.122 billion? No, that cannot be true. Let me just I'm kind of stunned. I'm actually stunned by that, for real. It says, where does the United States get $3.2 billion to pay? Oh my gosh. Okay, here's Road Dog. I'll give you, hang on just one second, Road Dog. Good morning, UCY.TV. This is Lonnie.
Hey, how you doing, Lonnie?
Hey, Road Dog. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, I was gonna talk to you about what you've been talking about. Hang on a second. Let me turn this computer off.
No problem.
Well, for some reason it's not shutting off.
We got time.
Well, anyway, you were talking about the social engineering.
Yes.
And you actually mentioned a couple of these things online that I was going to talk with you about. Hang on a minute. I got an echo here because the stupid computer will
I'll talk about, let me see if I can find how much money we're giving away to Saudi Arabia. It looks like in 2014, 1.55 billion in aid to Saudi Arabia. Our country, well, we send $1.5 billion in annual aid to Egypt. That's what we're giving to Egypt. Ironically, it's kind of funny. It's hard to find out what we give to Saudi Arabia. I know we give Saudi Arabia boatloads of money. But the Google...
Yeah. And actually, Israel just got a raise. Now we give them $4.5 billion.
Yeah, because they really need more money to kick the Palestinians off of their land, so they can beat up more teenagers. That's the idea. They're just not beating them. They're just not getting those Palestinians to go away or die quickly.
As much as they're trying.
It's outrageous. And honestly, it really blows me away that we are being attacked on all fronts. We have our own tax dollars going to people who are perpetrating heinous crimes. And at the same time, our own government is actually perpetrating a really heinous crime with this ignoring the nuclear cartel, because
they're all in partners with it.
Obviously.
I mean that's been known for a long time. Saudi Arabia and the Bushes, in this country have been, in bed with each other.
Well, Saudi Arabia was created by the Bush crime family, right? Like in World War II, they were part of instrumental in cutting up that whole area of northern Africa and that whole peninsula over there. They actually they created that intentionally. That was their idea. There's a great book by Russ Baker called The Family of Secrets. And it is actually...
Well, they did the same thing with Israel, too.
Yeah, they actually did do the same thing. Have you ever read this book by Greg Palast called Armed Madhouse?
No.
Oh my God! It's actually, it really exposes how they perpetrated the crimes that basically have been in planning for at least 100 years. And the destruction of America is not a new idea. They've actually been going after it for quite a long while. And now I think they have people lulled into obedience. This is why me and you, we're considered radicals. That's why we're considered extremists, because we're willing to talk about radiation. For goodness sakes, we're listening to an alternative radio station all day long, right? So that
Right.
automatically puts us on the cuckoo list, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I know that for a fact that there's no safe level of radiation. But they always want to do that to you.
Well, Goffman wrote several books. In fact, there's a gigantically thick book that I bought on the internet recently, and the title of it is something, I don't know the exact title, but it's like an in-depth analysis of the effects of low-level radiation. And I mean, it must be at least 1,000 pages thick. It's quite a thick book. There is lots of scientific evidence that shows even a mild level of exposure to man-made radiation. And he actually talked about this in the book. You know how we're always being told, well, we're being exposed to radiation all the time, natural radiation. You know what he said in his book last?
Well, I really don't call the natural radiation, the background, I don't consider that really radiation. What I consider that is electromagnetic forces. I believe there's a difference between the two.
Well, John Goffman in his book last night, he was saying basically there is no real difference in the way it interacts, and this is what the scientists hang their hat on all the time. He said, in fact, what they've shown is this natural level of radiation it has been causing, this is where we get genetic mutations. It causes about a 10% genetic mutation increase in the population. He said, so the logic of, oh, well, we have natural radiation, to add in the additional factor of man-made radiation is doubling it, saying that basically it's okay that we have a 20% mutation rate on the human species. The human species can pretty much thrive with a 10% mutation rate from natural radiation. You add in that 20%, and now you have 1/5 of the population grotesquely affected by man-made radiation. And it puts us over the top in terms of being able to maintain our fitness, our species fitness. I'm talking about species fitness, ability to reproduce. It's a shock, I have to say. And I don't know how you feel, or the environment where you live, but where I live here in Eugene, people here really are like, oh, I only want to talk about the nice things. I don't want to talk about those things that are really out of our control and really scary. Really?
No, I think that's all over the country. It's because it comes back to this social engineering. And most of it comes through the TV that they're glued to.
Yeah.
And they can't peel their eyes off that TV, and they just soak up everything that they're being told.
Yeah, and
and then
it's not even just.
And then the schools are doing the same thing.
It's even worse than
the military is doing the same thing. The churches are doing the same thing. The internet is doing the same thing. And like you said, we're all medical experiments. And like you said too, the politically correct. You can't offend anybody, so they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Then we got the law enforcement and the politics. I'm sure I probably missed some kind of angle that they're not coming at us from. I mean,
Well, you know what they can't, they really cannot. This is, I think, the thing the most annoying to them is they really cannot control the human spirit. They really, the television, it's not even so much of people are accepting what they're being told. They get to click the channel and watch the food channel, or they watch the history channel, or they watch this and that. They don't even, I have a niece of mine living in Southern Oregon who really never listens to the radio, never listens to the television. If there was a nuclear fallout, she wouldn't even know about it. There are people who just refuse to participate because they know they're being lied to. She's at least more conscious than most people.
Well, and then there's the other side of the coin there. The other people just, they don't want to hear about it because it's apathy, and they just don't care. They're happy with their head in the sand, and
well, I don't think
they
they're
just go
happy.
about their lives. And
look, I think what they are is, I think that they feel unempowered. People feel like there's nothing they can do about it, so why pay attention to it? They might as well make an effort to live their lives as good and as clean as they can, and maybe they'll make it out. I really believe that's the majority of people.
I've actually heard people say that, well, there's nothing I can do about it anyway, so, the hell with it.
Right, exactly, and that's, again, the social engineering. It's all about making people feel disempowered, like we have no control. It's exactly what they tell us about our health also. There's nothing, oh, well, don't worry, everybody's going to get cancer.
I'm going, okay, well,
Huh?
I mean, they might be cutting into him for nothing. I mean, and he won't even go get a second opinion.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean,
people don't understand.
I think I'd get 2 or 3 opinions on that one first.
This is really amazing. So look, I have another call coming in. Do you want to join in, or do you want to hang up? I'll give you the option.
Well, this phone is really bad. I can't hardly hear you anyway, so I'll let you talk to him, and I'll listen on the radio.
Okay. Talk to you soon, Brenda.
Or her,
Thanks.
or whoever.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Wow. Dylan? Good morning. You're on the radio with Lonnie Clark, the Age of Fission radio.
Hi, Lonnie. This is Ed Osworth here in Eugene.
Hey, Ed. How you doing? Good to hear you. Hey, so you
I'm doing fine. I got to turn down the radio on my end. I didn't realize there was
a lot of
delay.
feedback.
There we go.
Hey, thanks for listening, and thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah. Your feed went out for about 2 or 3 minutes right before I called in.
Yeah, I know that, and I have no idea what happened, but I just hung in there, and it came back. I saw that it came back.
Okay, I just didn't know whether you were aware, and my conversation this morning is really for those of us like me that are absolutely convinced of the danger. What is the best, most actionable thing we can do that might have an effect?
Okay, so what's your idea? Let's get it from the Oz, Ed Oz. Let's hear it.
Well, what I'm saying is that's actually what I'm asking you, because you have much more knowledge of the legislature and how things work and the NRC than I do. So if I'm just like, say, Joe Guy on the street, and I'm listening to your show, and I'm going, man, this is making me angry, okay, what should I do?
Well, the one
What
thing
might have an effect?
Well, this is the one thing that we can do that I know will have an effect, especially after speaking with Donna Gilmore for 4 hours last weekend. Get engaged with the NRC. They actually do listen. It only takes 1 or 2 people to change their minds. That's why these comments are so important. Get engaged. Find out. Actually, start to educate yourself and be responsible for understanding what your local nuclear power plant is up to, who owns it, how it operates. Make comments on the NRC website. Force your congressman, harass your congressman to tell them to pay attention. We should all be calling our congressmen, our senators, our mayors, our state representatives, our governors, and tell them we do not want the hormesis theory, and we expect them to make a comment with the NRC that they do not want the hormesis theory. And, you know, these kinds of actions matter. And I think that that's probably one of the most effective things we can do is actually, when they have public hearings at the NRC, go to the public hearings. Because the issue is this. People don't even show up. All the information's right on the website. People do not show up. And frankly, because nobody shows up, I mean, it just makes logical sense, Ed. If our elected officials are only hearing from the lobbyists, that's who they're going to obey. If they're getting a check for $50,000 from Monsanto to put down the GMO labeling laws, and nobody, and maybe 10 people from their entire district calls them, who do you think they're going to vote with? But if they get 1,000 calls from their constituents in a district that might have 100,000. Now, if you have 100,000 constituents and 1,000 people call, that's only 1%. But guess what? That 1% is enough to make the guy feel nervous that he might actually.
Yeah, I've heard that one phone call in actually equals about 100 people because they hear from so few people.
Yeah, I mean, Pete DeFazio's office in our district right here in Eugene, I asked his secretary how many people from the 4th District in Oregon actually called DeFazio's office in a year. She said they get less than 3,000 phone calls in a year. There's over 300,000 constituents here. They get less than 3,000, and most of those 3,000 are repeat offenders like me, people like me who call them up on a regular basis.
Repeat offenders, I like that. But you've made a really good point, you know, that those listening should realize, and that is just picking up the phone and calling in is like picking up a megaphone because so few people do it. Well, it's not like you're competing with thousands of other people's opinions. If you call in and express your opinion, I mean, yes, you aren't going to talk to the representative directly, but still someone's going to take note, and that information is going to get passed on to them.
Not only that, but look, the immigration issue is a perfect example. About a year and a half ago, Congress was all set to really redo the immigration laws and allow for a pathway to citizenship, bring millions of people out of the shadows, stop making people that come to our country live in fear. And what happened? The teabagger movement got freaked out all over Rush Limbaugh's station, Lars Larson, all these guys, they're out there saying, call your congressman, tell him, no way, no way. They shut down the switchboard at the Congress. There were so many people that called in a 24-hour period. That thing got shelved in a second, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. So it is really, we have the power. And on this nuclear issue, you know why people don't call in? Because they are baffled with bullshit, because they're not scientists. Because we are told, oh, don't worry, we know the truth. There's no more radiation from Fukushima than in a banana, which is such bullshit because our bodies have been eating bananas forever. And in fact, it's the potassium. Our bodies need potassium. What happens is those IUM, potassium, cesium, sodium, all those IUM nuclides, they all kind of react. And this is what I'm learning in John Goffman's book. They all react in our body the same way. Our body absorbs the cesium just like it absorbs the potassium. So instead of taking in the healthy radionuclides that we need, the healthy radiation that helps build our bodies, we're absorbing in the potentially harmful radiation that accumulates and will break our systems down and will kill us. So we need to get educated. We need an edumacation, as they say. Are you still there, Ed? So, I think I lost Ed. I don't think he's on the line anymore. So, I'm going to keep going because actually on that same theme, it's actually exactly, where we are. I mean, this is what we really need to do. Oh, let me see. I think he called us back. Hold on just one second. Good morning, UCY.TV. This is Lonnie on the Age of Fission radio show.
Can you hear me now? This is Ed.
Yeah, hi Ed. I didn't even realize it didn't been disconnected.
I totally. That's okay. I didn't either. What I wanted to interject there, though, was that people always have a doubt because of all the bullshit that the scientists are spouting on TV every night. About, hey, don't worry about this, everything's under control. And what I'd like anybody to do who has any shadow of a doubt is go to your Facebook wall and read that article you posted yesterday about what scientists are finding in the area around Fukushima with the children.
Right. That actually really pushed me over the edge. You know what really made me angry about that, Ed, is that there's actually scientists in Fukushima who are doubting the fact that the radiation caused their cancers. After all these years, we know that it's an exposure. And in fact, in Japan, it's considered taboo to say that radiation causes cancer. You cannot say that in their country. So
is this part of a hangover from Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
No, it's a hangover from fucking Fukushima. That's what okay. It's part of the secrecy laws. I mean, this is exactly...
Oh, that's right.
They got it going during Hiroshima, and frankly, they did it before then with the mercury poisoning. The industrialists, the same technologists, went to Japan and started poisoning the Japanese, 30 years before they started with the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bomb. And I don't think it's because people have said, well, it's because Japan refused to get in line with the whole Israeli blah, blah. I think it has nothing to do with that. You want me to tell you what I think? I think it has to do with white male privilege. I think anybody who is not a white person, a white Anglo person, is considered less than by the powers that be. And well,
I hate to concur with you, but I have to. And the other thing is, if people want to do some research, one of the most horrible things I find in history is the fact that the Hiroshima might have had some sort of justification. I don't believe it did, but it's easy to find a way where Hiroshima could have had a justification. But Nagasaki was simply an experiment to see what nuclear would do.
See what the other bomb would do. It was a different type of bomb. So they just want to...
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. So it was a slightly different atomic bomb design?
Yes, and that's what that's why they bombed the Marshall Islands, over 60 bombs. In 10 years, they were using different types.
Well, I knew they were trying the hydrogen bomb, but I didn't realize that was a different design on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
You know what? Just like the nuclear power plants, Ed, every single one of them is a new design. Every single one of them is an experiment. Because they can't.
They blew the first one, the Santa Susana sodium reactor experiment, which had 3 meltdowns, and they still haven't gotten it right.
Well, you know what? Tell people, it's interesting because you shared that with me. Tell people where the geographic area is of that Santa Susana meltdown. And what's Yes, I'm very familiar with that. And for any of you that lived in the Los Angeles basin or had your parents living or grandparents in the Los Angeles basin,
in the period between 1958 and 1962, there was 3 or 4 complete nuclear meltdowns, much more toxic than 3 Mile Island, in the 100-fold toxic than 3 Mile Island, that happened right in Chatsworth at what used to be called Rocketdyne in the old days, and became known as the Santa Susana Field Lab, where they actually had 4 experimental reactors.
I
One
hate
of them
to
was
interject
called
this, Ed, but isn't Chatsworth now the porn center of Los Angeles County?
That is very but Chatsworth has always been a place where movie stars have lived, and where there's been a lot of people within the industry, which actually ties into this story with all the 60s actors and actresses dying of cancer in the 70s, and the fact that virtually all scenes that were taken outdoors in 60s television shows were filmed right next door to this Santa Susana Field Laboratory. And the NBC, if any of you are interested in this, go online and do a search for NBC story, which is very recent, just came out 2 weeks ago. They did a year investigation into this, and literally found out that they were deliberately releasing toxic radiation over the entire Los Angeles basin.
You know,
my personal experience is that both my parents died. One 27 years later, the other 28 years later, and Lonnie can tell you what the average is for high-low level exposure radiation, which is about 30 years.
Yeah, it starts at about 15 to 20.
Oh, and my brother got melanoma, too. We might as well throw that in.
Yeah. Well,
he was exposed as well.
You know, this whole thing, actually, that whole thing about the Santa Susana thing, I mean, there are thousands of homes in that area right now. I wonder what the oncology rates are. I bet you, or the genetic mutation, or the autism rate, or the diabetes rate. See, this is the things that they do not track. This is the crime against...
Well, and they don't even cover it because, believe it or not, there have been giant lawsuits, class action suits from the people that have homes down there regarding this exact subject, but you very rarely see coverage.
Well, did they win? Do they win these cases, or do they lose?
Well, you might understand the tactics they use. Well, they've spent a lot of money on the cases, and then finally it comes to a judge who goes, well, you should have known this went on back in the 60s.
Right. You should have known.
You should have, even though they hid the meltdowns for 30 years. They told the public the only reporting that was done to the public was that there had been a minor incident at the reactor and that no radiation had been released. That was it. But now the position of the courts is, well, you should have known they were releasing all this toxic radiation. Because, of course, you're dealing with some of the biggest contributors in the world. Right now, that site is owned by Boeing. Okay? In the 60s, it was owned by Atomic Energy Incorporated, which was virtually all of the atomic energy people wrapped up into one when they were trying to figure out how to build reactors. And the point I want to make on this is the very first commercial reactor in the United States was one of the reactors they built up there, the sodium reactor experiment. And it failed. Every person that worked on that entire site, Lonnie knows this, died of cancer to one person. Not one person worked at the Santa Susana Field Lab who did not die of cancer.
Well, I wonder what happened to their offspring if they are if they have reproductive fitness, if they also have diabetes, if they have endocrine.
Well, in the NBC story, and this shows how sick this business is. In the NBC story, you hear from broken-hearted workers who, just by wearing their clothes home from work, killed their children.
Wow. Wow.
Because their children got leukemia at really early ages.
Yeah.
So, and one more comment I want to make regarding the safety of the industry. When you see that NBC story, there's a picture that I say encapsulates the whole thing. They had to open the sodium reactor to get the fuel rods out, which are the most dangerous thing on planet Earth, and the most radioactive thing. And they had this worker who had actually opened the reactor. The top of it looks like a submarine capsule. And he was sticking his head in, looking for the radiation. He was wearing no safety equipment, but he did have a hat on that said, "Safety is our business."
Really? That's totally hilarious.
Yes. And I mean, that photo totally says it all.
Yeah, let's just say we're safe. That's exactly what they're doing to us now. They're saying, "Don't worry." I mean, listen, Ann, I'm jumping up and down over this idea that we have uranium-tainted water 89 times over the maximum contamination limit. If the people who are running those aquifers think that people in America are not going to be sick in 10 to 15 years, they are sadly mistaken. We've had plenty. John Goffman and actually Linus Pauling did studies on this in the 50s because there were uranium miners who were actually getting grotesquely sick. Their families were dying. People were dying from uranium.
Well, you know, Lonnie, let's use a little common sense here to help unconfuse people from science. And that is, if radiation is as benign as they say, then how come when you go to the dentist they put a 2-inch thick lead jacket on you? How come the girl leaves the entire room when she takes those x-rays, which are very low levels of radiation?
Right.
Okay, I mean, people don't connect the dots. They wouldn't be putting a lead suit on you.
Well, it's really just about, I think, again, it goes back to the social engineering of everything, where we are being conditioned to not respect life. We are being conditioned to accept death, not respect life, which is why we're also being conditioned, fill your body with shit and chemicals that will make you sick, because really, you got to die of something anyway, so you might as well enjoy whatever it is you're going to put in your hole in your face. I mean, it's such a disrespect for life. It's unbelievable. Like, just shove stuff in that hole in your face and make yourself feel good so that we don't have to think about the harm.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we've had a lot of comments. You know, I've heard them on your show of people going, and just like the last guy was saying, you know, I don't understand it. Why are people sticking their head in the sand, right? Well, I want to ask you a question because I'm not really familiar because I haven't been a parent. But how long have they been giving kids Ritalin in school?
Oh, my goodness. At least since my children were 10 or 15 years old, because I know that my niece, her school got very angry at her because my niece had a child who was really unruly, and they wanted to put him on Ritalin, and she said no. And they forced her to move. They would not allow him to stay in their school.
That's how it is. And I mean, I'm going to do some research today on this because I'm wondering what percentage of our generation now that is adults were drugged as children in school.
Oh, probably a large portion, just like a large portion of our population right now are still on drugs. Like, I think about that. That's one of my big anxieties.
Okay, I'll give you the stats. And that is 72% of 72% of all Americans take at least one prescription drug.
Wow.
Okay? When you get down to those that take 4 or more a day, it's 22%.
Wow.
So you're talking about, people talk about the zombie holocaust, Lonnie, it's already here.
Well, that's what I think about it. If we had a catastrophic event and the systems went down, I don't think I'd be afraid of living without water or electricity. I'd be afraid of all those people that are hooked on drugs who can't get their drugs anymore. Like, those are the kind of frightening, and those people all have guns. So that kind of makes me afraid. So look, we're coming on.
Well, I guess you got to wrap it up. It looks like it's the end of your time here.
It is. We have 20 seconds left, and I really appreciate your phone call and your contribution to the show, Ed. Please call back. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us here on UCY.tv. Please make a contribution if you can. We'll see you on Monday. Put your courage feet on. We need it. We'll talk to you.